All right. Hi, Marge. So we're going to have a lovely interview today to capture some of your incredible wisdom and knowledge. So we'll start out. Just tell us about yourself, where you're from, and what your background is in education in our community.
Okay, thanks, Deb. I'm excited about this opportunity to talk about education and from my point of view. Um, my full name is Marjorie Burke, but everybody calls me Marge. And I've lived here in Ware for a little over 20 years, year round. And prior to that, I was a summer resident. And then all that time I was living in Lexington, Massachusetts. I'm a graduate of the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy, now known as the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Allied Sciences University. I have a bachelor's degree in pharmacy, and I worked in some Boston hospitals early on in my career. And in the 80s, I helped a group of women write and develop a women's leadership training program where I learned a lot about how people learn. And that's, I think, has served me well in the years since then. I'm a lifelong learner and I like to learn new things. I was first appointed to the Ware Board in 2003 to fill a vacancy and then subsequently elected. I served 16 years on the board, 5 of them as the chair, and 10 years as the chair of the 18-member SAU 24 full board, which you now chair.
Yes, I do. It's awesome. Excellent. So talk about a little bit about education through your experiences. So as you're thinking back on your education, even as a young person, all the way through now, do you have some reflections about that?
Yeah. My education was very different than it is today. In elementary school, we sat in neat rows with our desks and chairs bolted to the floor. There was no group work. It was all you sit in your chair and your desk, and you didn't get up unless you were given permission. There was no group work. And looking back on it now in terms of how we do teaching and learning, I think I missed a lot in terms of not understanding the value of group work. And I think that was sort of drilled more into me when I did this leadership training program development, as I learned about the value of a circular leadership where you share what's going on. Everybody has a turn to excel and make the best of who they are. Let's see. I wrote some of these things down, and I got to look at my notes.
Yeah.
I love the fact that today's teaching is we call it differentiated teaching, where the educators understand that differences do count in how people learn, how they take in knowledge and interpret it. So that's a big plus. But looking at my 16 years on the school board, my first SAU 24 board meeting was a bit of an eye-opener. The topic of discussion was whether or not to hire a technology director. Now, this is in 2003. And look at how we have changed and grown since then. The comments from people, oh, we don't need that position. Why would we spend that kind of money? And now look at it. We have technology experts in every school, or in some cases, maybe more than one, depending on how big the school is. So things are very different than I experienced in the past. There were no paraeducators. in my growing up school years, right up through graduation from high school. There were no specialists. It was
Mhm.
music and art were taught by the classroom teacher. You'd finish your math lesson, and then all of a sudden, I can remember in the second grade, we'd finish whatever academic piece, and then the teacher would get up and go to the piano, and we'd have music. They were sort of separate. Didn't see
Mhm.
the correlation between what all the subjects. We didn't have IEPs and 504 plans.
Mhm.
I grew up in a time where the severely handicapped were not seen.
Mhm.
They were in residential facilities. And those that did have learning issues were in a separate class. So things have changed. We didn't have um, adjustment counselors and social workers and things like that. We did have guidance counselors.
Yeah. Um, what do you think about education now? 2021. What do you think?
2021, well, education in 2020 and part of 2021 took a big hit.
It was hard.
Just had to learn how to jump through hoops sort of overnight
Yeah,
when
they
schools were
did.
closed down and we had to go to online teaching. And
Mhm.
I have nothing but praise for our administrators and our teachers and how they adapted to that.
Mhm.
But it was at a cost in terms of how our kids learned and what they missed out on. The socialization, all of that
Mhm.
uh, was a big loss. But setting that aside, I think education right now is far greater than what it was in the past. Kids have morning meetings. They sit on the mats and they talk about what's going on, which helps the teachers integrate everything.
Mhm.
And of course, it puts an extra burden on the teachers, but um, there's a lot more, um, should we say, fun
Yeah,
in
for sure.
education
Maybe
than,
some more cohesiveness too, it feels
yeah,
like,
right,
being on the mat and talking.
right. Um, I'm on the staff of the Where in the World newsletter that comes out by email twice
Yeah.
a month. And Patty Osgood sends us stories of what's going on in the SAU. And I am so amazed and enthralled with how teachers have adapted. Um,
Mhm.
sure, through the whole COVID issue, but how they've integrated different subjects and to make it
Mhm.
much more exciting and to encourage kids to be lifelong learners.
Mhm.
And of course, my philosophy, as well as the SAU's, is we do what's best for kids. And
Mhm.
so by providing them with all the technology has to offer, I think is a great addition to what they're doing and how they're learning.
Mhm.
So let's see, what else did I write down about it? Oh, some of the other things that I like um, is the new way we do report cards. It's not A,
Mhm.
B, C, D, depending on what you got on your tests that the teachers gave. It's
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 in a variety of categories of how you are doing, are you participating in what's going on in the classroom? Have you done your homework? What are
Mhm.
your social skills, as well as what knowledge you've gained on the subjects,
Mhm.
each of the subjects that you are studying. So I think that's a great stride ahead. Uh, but I do wish that the Board of Education would look at how much testing is necessary, all these
Mhm.
mandated tests. It takes the teachers time to prepare the kids, then they have the time to do the tests. It takes them time away from actual teaching and
Yeah.
learning. And I know some of the testing is necessary to see how we're doing, how the kids are doing. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think about the future? Where do you think education is headed?
the future.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of bridge from the present into the future, I think one of the best things the SAU did while I was involved was to hire Dr. Lorraine Taccone Moore as the superintendent. And the best thing she did was to hire Jacqueline Coe, who was her assistant and now the superintendent. And I just see the future building on what has happened in the present in SAU 24.
Yeah.
Strategic plans, for instance, which is a living, organic, breathing document. It's reviewed regularly to see where we're going, how there again, the differentiated, integrated parts that all work together. If the buildings are being taken care of, how can the kids learn? And if whatever, all those things in the strategic plan. So I think those kind of things have put us on really good footing for the future. What else? I anticipate more learning skills, because life is not going to get any easier in this complicated world we live in. We're still going to have poverty and domestic violence and addiction and dysfunctional families, and all that affects a child's ability to learn in the classroom. And so I see more of those kind of skills being taught, and not necessarily by the classroom teacher, but by other people who come in and do it in group settings. I suspect that there will be continuing and more emphasis on professional growth with a Common Day Workshop and SAE University 24, where the teachers get the professional growth programs available to help them. And some of it is just done peer-to-peer, which I think is great. It's using what we have, who we have, to their best advantage. Again, you might be best in one subject and a way of teaching versus me in a different way of teaching. And so if our teachers have exposure to that, I think that'll help them be able to do it with their students. Oh, and another thing for the future, I hope, will be more attention paid to civics, starting right at the kindergarten level, right through high school. I don't think we've done a very good job across the country in understanding civics. A lot of our history has been whitewashed. And I mean, just this past week, the celebration of if you want to call it a celebration, maybe a remembrance of what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma 100 years ago. I didn't learn about that in school. I learned about it on TV recently. And that's part of our history. So I hope that there's more emphasis placed on helping us understand who we are in this country and what our potential is. So I think that there's a lot of exciting opportunities for our students coming up.
Absolutely. So if you could make one thing happen in education, specifically in SAU 24, what would that be?
It's not just SAU 24, it's everywhere in the state. I wish the state legislature would get off their idea of adequate funding and fund quality funds for our kids. Adequate is not a satisfactory term for me. I want to see quality education. And in order to do that, the legislator has to step up to the plate and find a way to better fund education across the state and in SAU 24. So that we have the ability to pay teachers a fair wage. Now, I know Henniker does better than Ware does with their pay scale. But teachers are educating the future of America. They deserve to be paid well. Our kids deserve to have um, the latest technology available to them. It doesn't have to be the Cadillac variety, but quality things available so that we can do what we have to do.
Right.
And to hire some of what I've been saying, different kinds of specialists, that takes money. It doesn't just happen because you stood under a tree and hoped an apple fell.
Right. I mean, we're trying to prepare kids for the future
Yeah,
and for career, to be college and career ready. And if we're asking them to be career ready, but not giving them the tools, it
right.
doesn't feel like we're doing the right job. And I think
Well,
you're right with adequate isn't, it's really not enough. We need to look at education funding across our whole state. We need to
yeah,
think about, isn't this an equality issue where if we only sort of fund a certain level and we're going to just sort of accept it's okay, well then you're always going to have kind of that separation, I think, in a lot of ways where, well, if I can afford something different or something better, then I'm going to go over here and go do that. But it seems like we leave sort of the vast majority of the population in each different school district kind of getting a different, they call it a different product, a different outcome. If we don't fund well, then you can only afford so much. And right now it's really on the back of the local taxpayer. And
that's
this
right.
is a
And a
hard
quality
way to do it.
and a
Hard.
quality education for the kids in New Hampshire should not depend on their zip code.
Not at all, right? This seems really tough. And the child didn't say, I think I'd rather live in this zip code versus that zip code.
Hmm.
And to say that it takes $3,500 or $4,500 and that's your adequate funding per child, and it's like,
I don't
have you
think
seen
so.
how much a bus contract costs? Have you
Yeah,
tried to provide a building for them to learn in and all the things that need to happen? So you're right that it just has to be the focus.
yeah.
And I'm
Right.
hoping that we get it
I hope
together
that
in this state about that at some
someday
point.
that the state will wake up to their job
I
and do it.
I hope so. I hope
I
so.
think
Um,
our kids deserve the best that we can provide for them. And
mhm.
I know SAU 24 does a fabulous job of that. Um, I'm not complaining at all because I think that we've done a
Mhm.
great job. I love some of the programs that John Stark has been doing to prepare kids for the future.
Yeah.
The some of the credits they get for advanced class
Mhm.
course, for college credits.
Absolutely.
Some of the like the welding program.
Yeah.
Um, and
Right.
we've had great things happen with our kids at John Stark.
Mhm. Absolutely. You can see those programs where our kids get to go to the CRTC in Concord and learn about mechanics or,
Right.
aesthetics, all of those things. There are so many interesting programs that they get to do that I know when I was in school, those weren't, there was some shop class, but not as much as what we're trying to offer here in SAU 24 for sure. So I
Right.
like that the kids have an option, that it's not just you're completely focused on college, because it's not what every kid wants to do.
That's right.
So I think
So
it's
I
good that we
know
have options.
in my high school, there were different programs that you were following, college
Mhm.
level, business level, general program, or sort of a more mechanical shop type program.
Yeah. Any final words for folks about education today?
Final words. Read a lot,
Mm,
educate yourself to what's going on in the world, make learning fun because it is. Learn new
yeah.
things. Every day, learn something new. If so,
Absolutely. So, what I want to say is thank you for taking time to have this interview and capture some of the wisdom and the legacy of Marge Burke. So,
well,
thank
thank
you.
you. I'm thrilled to have been invited to take part in this new endeavor. And I
Thank
wish
you.
everybody at the SAU very well. Keep
Thank
on
you.
keeping and educate our kids, do what's best for them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks, Deb.